for the 2025-2026 fiscal year, an initial response to it could be excitement, as Premier Burt has presented a budget with quite a few positive items, and he's even promised a balanced budget. The budget is a statement of priorities and is equally important to identify what's missing or left out. The devil is in the details. And to be frank, Premier Burt and his government are misleading the public in a few ways. There has not been a full and frank characterization of the government's fiscal performance. It has been stated that there was a $19.7 million surplus for last year, but in reality, due to hidden off-balance sheet spending, the net debt was increased by $54 million in the 24-25 budget year and $78 million in the 23-24 budget year, or $134 million for both years combined. That's deficit spending. What does that mean? Quite simply, the finance minister was spending money out of one pocket while pretending it didn't count for his statistics, just so he could misleadingly claim a surplus. Given that, how confident should the public be about his pronouncements regarding our country's finances? The devil is in the details. Government continues to take credit for economic growth, but that growth is driven primarily by the international business sector. The local economy and local salaries have barely risen and are being outpaced by the cost of living. This budget further cements the government's reliance on the international business sector. The plausibility of this budget is built around the corporate income tax initiative, but, and rightfully so, the IB community will expect better infrastructure on the island, a lower cost of living, and other improvements. If the government can't deliver, Bermuda will be less attractive for them. Can Bermuda afford that? And we must never lose sight of the fact that our locals deserve the very same things, perhaps even more so. The opposition is often accused of highlighting the doom and gloom, and what we are really doing is speaking on behalf of those people's reality, probing and questioning. After all, this is what the public wants, and most of all, deserves. We are glad, if that's the word, to see that the government has finally, after several years, accepted that for many Canadians, all is not well. And we are happy to see that Premier Burt and his government have listened to us, and they have adopted a number of our ideas. For example, we are particularly pleased to see pension reform being made a priority, but it is unclear why social insurance reform must wait yet again until next year to be addressed. It was good to see the 12-month waiting period for access to personal home care eliminated for future care and HIP recipients. But what happens to residents who don't have insurance at all? Healthcare is only truly universal if it provides for them as well. Our roads remain in dire need of repair. Once again, $5 million has been allocated to fix them. But given that the same amount was allocated last year, and a significant fraction of that was not spent, how much will actually get done this year? Government is now saying we'll waive import taxes on tires and car parts. But I think what we'd all prefer is for the roads to be fixed in the first place and have minimal damage for our vehicles. And given the delays in the asphalt plant, what are the realistic expectations for road repairs in the coming year? This year also saw the Bermuda Tourism Authority receive the smallest increase in allocated funds. How can this be? What should be the second pillar of our economy? And after the government scheduled an election that denied students abroad the opportunity to vote, then promised it would provide absentee voting, we suggest it is insulting to our youth that no funds seem to be allocated for absentee voting and no mention was made in the budget statement. Finally, there was no mention of what the government will do with our now failed gaming commission and gaming industry. The elimination of payroll tax for employees over the age of 65 that was touted during the election has been deferred, and the promised reduction in vehicle license fees won't even happen until the next fiscal year. So frankly, it's a bit odd that it was even brought up in this year's budget. Is this government really about keeping the promises that it's made? The One Bermuda Alliance only wants what's best for Bermuda and its people. The creation of an economy where everyone can not only survive, but thrive, not just today, but but for generations to come. We are willing to work collaboratively with the government to make this happen, but in order to do so, we must be honest about the true state of our island's financial affairs and the serious issues facing our economy in the future. Thank you. Any questions?
I'd rather wait after I get myself together.
No question.
Okay.
So the government said that they delayed and postponed a number of tax breaks. Were you surprised at all by that move?
No, that's a great question. We were not surprised. We have heard about, for example, some of the payroll rises that have been promised for the public servants have been delayed. And you can now see in the budget that many other initiatives and tax breaks that the government's promised have been delayed. We would surmise that the Premier was perhaps banking on a certain amount of CIT income or other kinds of cash flow things to happen that are now not materializing or may not happen until much later. And I think that highlights the criticalness of the CIT and the cash flows that it comes to making this budget or future budgets actually work. And we think, frankly, the Premier has overset the expectations and overpromised.
There's also mention that around $500 million was expected to be paid down on our debt service, or rather towards our national debt by 2026-27. Did you find that realistic at all?
It's so hard to say. There's a line in the budget called CIT income. I think of it as penciled in very lightly. We have to get through this year. Which companies will even be paying material amounts of CIT? Which companies may choose to pay it elsewhere or move their operations elsewhere? What does that look like over the next, say, 1 to 3 years of the business cycle? We already know that some companies have reported for Q1 actually net losses. So where they may have, say, accrued corporate income tax that they would be paying later this year based on Q1 results, they're actually accruing tax benefits, tax credits based on those losses.
And just lastly, so on one hand, the government has not shied away from the global uncertainties, the pressures that the country may be under to stay above board. However, across all ministries, at least a 1.5% increase in budget allocations. Did you agree with that move? Is that necessary for every portfolio?
Without drilling into each specific portfolio, it's a bit hard to say. It's perhaps not unreasonable that the expenses rise over time with inflation, as well as the government would probably say, oh, payroll tax revenue is going up. I think it's important to note that a lot of the increases in revenue the government is seeing are off the back of rising payroll. Now, from our view, that's basically off the back of very good IB results over the past couple of years. It's a cyclical sector. People may not get the bonuses in this financial year that they got in the prior 2 financial years. And while government has benefited from upside on that, that is definitely not guaranteed and perhaps should not be counted on so strongly.
The government leaning too much into its taking credit for IB success?
Absolutely. We know from our analysis that most of the economic performance of the island is measured by the GDP. Almost all of it is driven by international business and financial services, and very little of it is coming through growth in the local industry. And if you think about it, government can't really control what's going on with IB. That's driven by global capital pressures, global industry cycles. Now, they have done a good job with the CIT to date, but that was more of a response to something. It's not like the government is out there drumming up insurance business and making insurance rates high. And we know that they are coming off of a peak and they are declining.
Should the Gaming Commission be made defunct?
It's pretty straightforward. You either have to get gaming working very quickly or shut down the Gaming Commission. And with every month or quarter that goes by, shutting it down looks like perhaps the most practical option.
Thank you.
Yes. Just thoughts on BHP. I know that after the last year, there's been a lot of talk of lack of funding going towards BHP. So seeing that there seems to be money now reserved set aside for, what are your thoughts on this?
So our view is that the block grant model for funding the hospital is fundamentally broken and is causing a lot of issues with the hospital funding. It's part of the reason why the hospital staff can't get the pay rises that they need and deserve. The fact that the government has had to put in a line item for additional funding shows in fact that the block grant model is broken because they're having to top it up. They basically had to top it up every year. Some years they failed to top it up or even pay the block grant on time, thereby creating additional pressures on the hospital. So we were hoping to see a bit more of a comprehensive approach to reform that.
And there's been quite a lot done to try to mitigate construction tax. Given how things are looking with overseas markets, do you think that this approach is viable for the next year?
Yeah, we definitely support cutting out the construction tax. Surprising to see that they only took it down to 10%. I think given the need for housing and to spur development on the island, it's not hard to argue that perhaps that could be zeroed out. I appreciate when you put a budget together, it's hard to zero out any tax as well. So directionally, it's a good thing.
Great,
Thank you. All right, thanks everybody. Appreciate it.
Thank you.